The following story and photos are from GiantPandaKing's book, Gotham 1919 to 1939, by Russell S. Beatty, available from www.GiantPandaKing.com. Viewer discretion is advised. After the fall of the Court of Owls in 1934, Gotham City settled into a relative peace and normalcy. It was almost as if the citizens could finally breathe easy. The organized mob in Gotham was still active but largely subdued. Most of the supervillains, as they were nicknamed by the media, had been interned in either Arkham Asylum or Blackgate Federal Penitentiary. Many considered it to be a much-needed and well-deserved break from the atrocities that Gotham had witnessed in recent years. It had seen the rise of costume criminals and vigilantes, secret societies bent on domination, and corruption unlike any other city in the U.S. In the midst of all this, Bruce Wayne did his best to continue helping Gotham maintain that normalcy. He oversaw the continuation and conclusion of the Gotham Urban Renewal Project. Bruce was tired. The toll that crime fighting had taken on him was weighing him down. He felt good being able to help Gotham as Bruce Wayne, not the Batman, for a change. In celebration for the completion of the Gotham Urban Renewal Project, Bruce decided to host a gala at a venue in the city proper. All of Gotham's figureheads were invited, as well as many members of the police force. Bruce wanted to show gratitude to those who had turned their noses up at corruption and made the project possible. On the night of the event, Bruce was in high spirits. One of Bruce's, as well as the Batman's close friends, Commissioner James Gordon, also attended this gala. The following interaction is mentioned in the journals kept by Bruce Wayne before and during the events of the Shadow War. Upon approaching Gordon, Bruce noticed that the Commissioner was speaking with another police officer, Jason Bard. Bruce knew Bard through his nightly activities. Bard was an informant for the Batman. As Bruce approached the pair, Bard left abruptly. Bruce and Gordon engaged in casual conversation until Bruce mentioned the interaction he had just witnessed. Gordon, in a hushed tone, told Bruce not to repeat what he was about to hear, swearing him to secrecy. Bruce agreed. The two men went outside the building to talk in privacy. Gordon told him of the recent rumors on the street that the police had heard about, that a series of coordinated attacks had happened throughout Gotham. These attacks had been seemingly random and were against all manner of citizens. Businessmen, construction workers, homeless men and women were all victims. Most had been either killed or seriously injured. All had been killed by a bladed weapon, most likely a sword. Gordon told Bruce that it reminded him of the battle for Gotham's Chinatown. Gordon's final words to Bruce haunted the young millionaire. If this is anything like that, it means there's another war coming. Bruce could barely respond before the entire street was rocked by a massive explosion. Reeling in shock, Bruce and Gordon watched the building that they had just been in light up with fire. It knocked them off their feet. As Bruce came to his senses and stood up, he knew without a shadow of a doubt. This was no accident. There was a strangely colored gas in the air. It resembled the fear gas that the Scarecrow had developed. As he looked around frantically at the crowds of screaming people, a face stood out to him in the crowd. It was the face of O-Sensei, head teacher of the League of Assassins. Before he could react, O-Sensei disappeared into the crowd. The fire department arrived moments later. Bruce could see some survivors reeling from the fear gas. He realized that Jonathan Crane was most likely involved. In the aftermath of the explosion, numerous people were dead, many more were injured, and still more reeling from the fear gas. Some individuals were even attacking each other viciously. Bruce immediately convened the Bat Team and all of their allies. Not all of their outside allies knew his identity, so he addressed them as the Batman. The members of the Bat Team included Nightwing, Oracle, Robin, Damian, Red Hood, Batwoman, Black Bat, and Alfred. Their allies outside of the immediate team were Onyx, Azrael, and Wildcat. The Batman caught them up to speed on the happenings at the gala. They all listened on in horrified silence at the sheer terror of the attack. The Bat informed them that he had seen O-Sensei at the scene. This undoubtedly made them all think of the numerous encounters they had already had with the League. Black Bat's heritage as the daughter of Cain and Lady Shiva, Jason's brainwashing at the hands of Professor Oho, Onyx's membership in the League as one of the Seven Men of Death, and the bloody battle for Chinatown. The League had made it personal. Each one of these people had been adversely affected by them. They all knew that a storm had been brewing for some time. It was merely a matter of when the League of Assassins would strike against Gotham. Utilizing the expertise of those allies who had been exposed to the League, as well as the dossiers that the Batman had on their members, the Bat's allies learned who it was they were up against. Onyx was familiar with the Seven Men of Death, the elite of the elite within the League, and shared her knowledge on them. Red Hood shared what he knew of Professor Oho and the League's brainwashing techniques. Damian corroborated their information. The Batman then shared what he knew about Ra's al Ghul. Many of the Bat Team had never heard of him except in passing comments made by the Bat. What he shared with them brought a whole new level of graveness to the situation. The Batman shared that Ra's considered himself a god. Where the demons had differed from their previous adversaries was that he considered himself to have a sacred mission, a duty to carry out. It was not so different from the Bat's own crusade, but much deadlier in nature. The Bat's allies were struck by the grim realization that this might be the largest threat they had ever faced, one that struck from the shadows, and one that considered itself to be the epitome of justice. While this meeting was occurring, another of the Bat's allies was within Gotham City itself. Lucius Fox had just finished working for the day at Wayne Enterprises and was heading to his automobile to return home. Lucius, responsible for so much within and without the Batman's crusade, was eager to return to his family. As he started up the car, the ignition made an odd noise. Lucius was hardly able to register this in his mind before the automobile exploded, killing him instantly. The death of Lucius Fox was a shock to the Batman and immediate Bat Team. The Batman knew that it was no accident. The League of Assassins had intended for this to happen in an attempt to cripple Wayne Enterprises and thus lead the Bat's crusade. The Bat still had his handyman, Harold Allnut, working on gear for him, but Lucius had been a close friend of Bruce's. Lucius had not been the only one attacked. Other city officials had also been killed in similar explosions that day. Lucius's son, Luke Fox, was impacted by his father's death the most. The young man had always looked up to his father and was deeply shaken by his sudden and violent death. The Batman was also deeply impacted, but he hid it from his allies. He was greatly saddened to lose another person whom he considered a dear friend. This death galvanized the Bat Team into action. They sought any clue that might lead them to the location of the League within Gotham. Bruce had reason to believe that Ra's al Ghul had not yet arrived. He knew his former mentor well enough to know that the Demon's Head would want to make his presence known. After days and nights of searching, however, the Batman and his allies were no closer to finding anything to point them in the right direction. Meanwhile, at the Gotham City Police Department, a large, mysterious crate arrived under the cover of night. Commissioner Gordon had his men bring it inside, and, hesitantly, they opened it. The police officers reeled back in shock at the sight within, the dismembered corpses of a cop and a detective who had gone missing in recent weeks. It also included a slip of paper with a crest on it, the signature seal of the Demon's Head. Gordon immediately turned on the bat signal. When the Batman arrived, Gordon briefed him on the grisly sight they had just uncovered. In the middle of their conversation, Jason Bard, the Batman's informant, arrived with news. He had been working undercover for Gordon to learn anything he could about the League of Assassins. Bard had received word from numerous sources that the Demon's Head would arrive in Gotham the very next evening. Bard alleged that Ra's al Ghul would arrive at the Gotham dockyards. The Batman was somewhat relieved to finally receive some good news. They now had information that would hopefully give them a leg up on the League. The Bat returned to his allies and shared this information. Together, they prepared to ambush the leader of the League of Assassins. They hoped to swiftly put an end to the chaos. Another day commenced, and night soon fell. The Bat Team and their other allies prepared to apprehend Ra's al Ghul. The sunset cast its orange light over the Gotham dockyards, and the Batman recalls a naive sense of surety in his journals. He was so sure that this conflict would come to a swift end. Soon enough, a ship arrived at the dockyards, and two figures stepped off of it. Both were cloaked. One figure stood almost a head taller than the other. Slowly, the shorter figure removed his hood, revealing Ra's al Ghul, the Demon's Head. The Batman revealed himself, stepping out from his vantage point. The tension in the air was palpable as the Batman stated that Gotham was under his protection. He would not allow Ra's to inflict any more damage upon the city, its people, or his allies. Ra's laughed at this statement. He replied to the Batman that his machinations had only just begun. The Demon's Head told him that there was no stopping it now, that the Batman had dug the grave for his city, its people, and his allies by rejecting the League of Assassins all those years ago. The tension rose, and it seemed as if a battle was about to ensue. Just before either side could advance, however, two massive explosions rang out from the city. The Batman and his allies turned to survey smoke rising in the distance. Ra's al Ghul laughed again, stating that the explosions had originated at Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Federal Penitentiary. Ra's told them that he had freed the inmates, restoring to them what Gotham had stolen, their freedom. Ra's turned to the Batman, saying,
"It looks like you'll have your hands full, Detective."
The Batman and his allies had no choice but to allow Ra's to escape. They had to help the police contain the prisoners. As they rushed to do so, the Batman reached the grim realization of his naivety. This conflict was far from over. It had only just begun. The chaos that followed the explosions at Blackgate and Arkham was catastrophic. Numerous inmates from both institutions managed to escape into the streets of Gotham. The Batman, Bat Team, and their other allies all worked tirelessly to aid the Gotham City Police Department in apprehending the escapees. Even after detaining numerous inmates, there were still many more unaccounted for. Some of those detained in Blackgate's Special Inmate Program wing managed to escape, including Killer Croc and the Man-Bat. Missing escapees from Arkham Asylum included the Joker and Two-Face, among others. The streets of Gotham were filled with pandemonium. The inmates of the two prisons were wreaking havoc. Many of Gotham's citizens were murdered in cold blood, their bodies left in the streets. Many more of Gotham's population fled the city altogether, no longer feeling safe in their own homes. Numerous fires raged across Gotham, with the police and fire department working almost all hours to keep the flames from consuming the city. The Batman and his allies found it necessary to reconvene and rethink their strategy, keeping Gotham safe while also finding a way to combat the League of Assassins and Ra's al Ghul. They set up a temporary base of operations in a building owned by Wayne Enterprises, an old warehouse that didn't see a lot of usage. This allowed them to be closer to the city and operate in it more centrally. Alfred remained in the Batcave with Ace the Bat-Hound, and Oracle joined them there from time to time. In spite of this, they still struggled to gain an upper hand. All of that changed when an unexpected visitor entered their base of operations. Lady Shiva, who had remained in hiding until this point, arrived and offered her help in the battle against the League. The Batman was immediately wary of this offer. He had battled with Shiva before, and she had been partially responsible for the bloodshed in Gotham's Chinatown. Oracle pulled the Batman aside and pointed out that Shiva did genuinely care for her daughter, Cassandra. Cassandra, as the Black Bat, had proven an invaluable member of the team. Oracle reasoned that Shiva had no ill intent so long as her daughter fought with the Bat Team. In light of this, the Batman begrudgingly agreed to allow Shiva to work with them. As the intensity of the conflict grew, Bruce felt an obligation to Alfred as well, an obligation to keep his surrogate father out of harm's way. Bruce attempted to dismiss Alfred, stating that it was for his own safety. Alfred snappishly replied that Bruce would have to knock him out cold and ship him in a crate to get him to leave Gotham. Grimly amused, Bruce realized that there was no changing his butler's mind. He reluctantly agreed to let Alfred stay on during the Shadow War, a decision that would come to haunt him. With the Bat Team resuming normal patrols and utilizing the information Shiva had given them, the Batman set his mind to stopping the machinations of the Demon's Head. Shiva remained a secret ally of theirs. She fed them new information as she gained access to it. The Bat and his allies fought numerous battles across rooftops, in the streets, and down alleyways against the League's members. It was slow progress, but it was progress nonetheless. In spite of these small victories, the Batman could not help but feel that Ra's had been ominously inactive since arriving in Gotham. It seemed as though the leader of the League was biding his time, waiting for an opportunity of some kind. Sure enough, this was exactly the case. In one evening, the police began to receive numerous reports. A suspected opium den was set ablaze in Gotham's Chinatown district. After the flames had been subdued, the body of Jason Bard was discovered inside. It was well known by some that he would frequent establishments like this in his spare time. His friends on the police force suspected that he had probably been drugged up when the fire started, resulting in his death. Across town in an abandoned Wayne Enterprises factory, another explosion occurred. Harold Allnut worked here, building equipment and maintaining vehicles for the Batman. Harold was born unable to speak, but this did not stop him from developing his mind. The man was a genius when it came to technology and engineering. The Batman had discovered him living in the abandoned factory, but soon brought him into the fold. This was due to his skills, obvious in the projects Harold had been working on before the Batman found him. Harold gravitated back and forth between the factory and the Batcave while working on the Batman's arsenal. Harold happened to be in the factory when it exploded. The blast killed him. This was a crippling blow to the Bat Team, who had lost both Lucius Fox and Harold Allnut in a matter of weeks. As the police learned of this, they relayed the info to the Batman. As the Bat was instructing each of his allies on what to do, he received a telephone call. The Bat Team had a secure line running through the entire city for communication. Alfred was on the other end of the line. He informed the Batman that Wayne Manor was under attack. Bruce could only presume that it was the League of Assassins. The Batman immediately entered the Batmobile and sped back towards Wayne Manor in the Batcave. He recounts the dread he felt in his journals.
I fear for Alfred's life. I fear for the city. And I fear that everything that we have worked for will come tumbling down around us.
As he arrived at the manor, he saw men dressed in black outside, some armed with swords and others with guns. One of them turned their Tommy gun on the Batmobile, damaging the wheels and the hood of the car. The Batman managed to get the car close enough to send the men scattering. He then leaped out of the car and disarmed the thugs with guns. He fought his way inside the manor. The interior of the mansion was littered with bullets, blood, and a few bodies of the assailants. Bruce could tell that Alfred had put up a fight. The carnage led to one of the secret passages to the Batcave. The false wall had been torn down. The Batman cautiously proceeded forward, worried for his surrogate father's safety. As he reached the cave itself, he saw more bodies. Alfred was not among them. He was propped up against one of the far walls, clutching a rifle. Beside Alfred lay Ace the Bat-Hound. The dog was still and unmoving. As the Batman approached them, he could see a large gash on Ace's side. The dog was dead. Alfred was also wounded, but still conscious. The Batman rushed to get his butler medical supplies. Alfred had spent numerous hours stitching Bruce up after dangerous escapades. Now it was Bruce's turn to do the same for him. After stabilizing Alfred as best he could, the Batman assisted him to the Batmobile. As they left Wayne Manor, however, another car arrived. Bruce could see that it was full of more members of the League of Assassins. They gave chase, firing rounds at the Batmobile while they sped into the city proper. Some of the bullets continued to tear away at the Batmobile, and eventually, the car gave out. Forced to abandon the automobile, the Batman helped Alfred into an alleyway behind some crates. The members of the League caught up to them after a few moments. The Batman found himself and Alfred completely surrounded and out of options. One of the League members shouted out for them to surrender or they would open fire. Looking at Alfred, the Batman knew that this could be the end for them. He braced himself, ready to go out fighting, when sudden gunfire sounded out. Peering out from behind the crates, the Batman saw the bodies of their assailants laying all around. Behind them were more men. One of them, shorter in stature, hobbled forward, stepping into clear view. It was Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin. The Penguin approached the Bat with his hands held high. The Batman assumed he wanted to show that he wasn't a threat. The Penguin stated that he'd had enough of the chaos being caused by the League of Assassins. Cobblepot wanted to form a truce with the Batman and his allies in order to restore balance to Gotham. The Penguin believed himself to be the sole person who maintained order in Gotham's criminal underworld. He wanted to regain that power and get rid of the people who threatened his hold on the city. The Penguin offered his assistance to any efforts the Bat team had already undertaken. The Bat was wary of this offer. The Penguin had been evading the law for years. At first he was inclined to turn down the offer, but thought back to the assistance they'd already accepted from Lady Shiva. The Batman realized something in this moment. The League would not play fair in this war. They had already proven this point through the explosions and misdirection. The longer the Batman and his allies took to end this conflict, the more lives would be lost. If they were to take strides to win this war, the Bat team would have to make some compromises. The Batman tentatively reached out his bloody hand to shake Cobblepot's gloved one. The two agreed then and there to form an alliance, but the Batman grimly warned him against any treachery. This uneasy alliance would serve to help them in the long run, but the Batman couldn't help but wonder, at what cost? He could sense that the biggest battles were yet to come, and that Gotham had even darker days ahead before the conflict would be resolved. The Shadow War would not end until Ra's al Ghul was stopped and brought to justice. Bruce resolved to himself that he would be the one to do it. He would end this conflict that he considered himself responsible for. The Batman would bring the demon's head to justice. After Lady Shiva joined their forces, the Bat Team really started to take steps towards ending the Shadow War. Her intel really started to become invaluable after the fall of the Batcave. She had been the most recently involved with the League of Assassins. She had only just left their service after the attack on Wayne Manor. Onyx didn't trust Shiva. They'd had a rocky relationship when Onyx had been in the League. With nowhere else to turn to, however, they had no choice but to trust Shiva. With her help, the Batman and his allies were able to track down the top lieutenants of the League of Assassins, the 7 Men of Death, Cain, and Nissa and Talia al Ghul. Shiva knew what targets each of them had been assigned, locations and individuals throughout Gotham. At long last, the Bat Team felt as if they had a concrete plan to systematically strike back against the League. Bruce warned them all not to let their guard down. Ra's al Ghul would also be instructing his men to be on guard against attacks like this. The Bat Team had no choice but to divide and conquer. Not many of the Bat Team were happy about the uneasy alliance the Batman had made with the Penguin, but saw why it was necessary. The Catwoman also presented herself and offered her assistance, which the team more readily accepted. Together, they devised their plan. Black Bat and Lady Shiva would take on David Cain. There was more than enough history there to justify it. Wildcat offered to take on Hook. Hook had killed Boston Brand, an old friend of Wildcat's. Azrael and Onyx would take on Malcolm Merlyn. Onyx wanted a chance to take down the man who had caused her much pain as the leader of the 7 Men of Death. Azrael merely wanted to help in any way he could. Nightwing and Robin would take on Deathstroke. They felt well equipped enough to take down the mercenary. The Bat had trained them well. Penguin and his forces would take on Silver Monkey. They considered such muscle necessary due to Silver Monkey's combat prowess. The Red Hood and the Batwoman would take on Professor Oho and Bronze Tiger. Jason wanted a chance to bring Oho to justice. The man had caused him to lose years of his life. The Batwoman admired Jason's tenacity and also wanted to test her mettle against the Bronze Tiger. The Batman, Catwoman, and Damian would focus their efforts on combating Nissa and Talia, as well as locating the demon's head and stopping him. Over the next few days, numerous rooftop and street-level battles took place. Lady Shiva and the Black Bat engaged and fought David Cain. It was a long and bloody battle, with Cain fighting tooth and nail to survive. It eventually ended with him subdued and on his knees. Black Bat held a sword to her father's throat, the man who had caused her so much pain and suffering. She chose mercy in that moment. She chose her new family, and spared his life. As she walked away, she heard the slash of a sword and saw Shiva standing over Cain's corpse. Cassandra's mother had taken her vengeance on David Cain. Wildcat managed to track down and fight Hook, one of the 7 Men of Death. During a brief verbal confrontation, Wildcat told Hook he was taking him down for killing Boston Brand. Hook laughed at this, and the two fought viciously. In the end, the Hook slashed Wildcat fatally, but not before Wildcat took one last-ditch swing at the assassin. It caught Hook unawares, and he stumbled and fell off the rooftop they were on, crashing to his death on the street below. Azrael and Onyx confronted Malcolm Merlyn atop an abandoned Queen Industries building. The combined combat prowess of Azrael and Onyx resulted in Merlyn being tremendously overmatched, though he fought extremely well. In the end, Onyx drove her spear through Merlyn's leg. The leader of the 7 Men of Death fell to the ground, but as Onyx approached, he drove his sword through her chest. Azrael moved to stop him, but was too late. Before Azrael could do anything, Malcolm threw a smoke bomb down, enveloping them all in it. Merlyn was gone when the smoke cleared, and Azrael was left alone with Onyx. In her last moments, Azrael held her hand, and she asked him to thank the Batman for her second chance. Onyx died a hero. In the battle between Deathstroke, Nightwing, and Robin, words were just as impactful as fists. Nightwing's quips and Robin's analytical mind confused and enraged Deathstroke. He fought with all his might, but the two remained seemingly unfazed by this fact. Eventually, Deathstroke's confusion and rage led to him making a mistake, and Nightwing and Robin incapacitated and detained him. Deathstroke would remember this fight for years to come, especially when combating a group that would later be known as the Titans. The Penguins' forces engaged Silver Monkey in the streets. Silver Monkey, as arrogant as they came, considered them to be no match for himself. He fought with hellish vigor, but eventually the sheer numbers of Penguin's men forced him to retreat. Fearful of Ra's al Ghul's wrath, Silver Monkey fled Gotham altogether. He would return to his life before joining the League of Assassins. Red Hood and the Batwoman tracked down Professor Oho and Bronze Tiger in an old laboratory in Gotham's industrial district. Red Hood underestimated the effect that seeing Oho would have on him. Oho knew which of Jason's buttons he could press, and it proved difficult for him to engage in combat. It was difficult, at least, until the Batwoman knocked Oho out cold with a single punch. With Oho incapacitated, Bronze Tiger attacked in retaliation, and the three fought. With a number of traded blows, the Red Hood landed the final punch that knocked Bronze Tiger unconscious. They bound the two members of the Seven Men of Death. It was here that Jason found himself in a position to take revenge. He aimed a gun at the unconscious form of Professor Oho. The Batwoman saw this but was indifferent. Her experiences had hardened her. She told Red Hood she wouldn't say anything to the Bat if he chose to take revenge. Before he could do this, however, Bronze Tiger, whom they had assumed was unconscious, broke from his bonds and pressed a button on a wired detonator. It ignited a series of bombs planted throughout the building. The blast blew the Batwoman out of the building, but Red Hood, Professor Oho, and Bronze Tiger were all consumed by the blast. Jason Todd's body was never found, leading to speculation as to whether he was actually dead or not. Regardless, in all of these battles, each member of the Bat Team had fought valiantly. They had defeated some of the worst menaces that the League of Assassins had to offer. Nyssa and Talia al Ghul proved to be a challenge for the Batman, the Catwoman, and Damian to defeat. Bruce knew that Damian would find it a challenge to have to face his mother, but he also knew that Damian could handle himself well enough. Nyssa, seeing that the tide of the battle was not in her favor, left her sister to fend for herself. Upon seeing this, Talia surrendered. The Batman bound her hands and asked her where Ra's was. Talia, having fought for her father half-heartedly from the start, offered up his location freely. Ra's al Ghul was in a lair beneath the Monarch Theater. The Batman let her go. He felt that he owed her that much for having left her so suddenly all those years ago. Damian noted this, and everything in his father and mother's interaction. He was feeling somewhat torn between the League and his father. The Catwoman offered to go and assist the other members of the Bat Team and tell them of Ra's al Ghul's location. The Batman and Damian departed for Monarch Theater right away. The Demon's Head was there waiting for them. The Batman also noticed Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, was there with Ra's. Ra's al Ghul revealed his endgame to them, to unleash a blast of Crane's fear gas so powerful that it would cause Gotham citizens to tear each other apart. The contraption they would use to do this was what Crane had been working on since his disappearance. It was here, underneath the Monarch Theater. Before the Bat could stop him, Damian charged the Scarecrow and attacked him. Simultaneously, Ra's drew his sword and attacked the Batman. The Bat and the Demon's Head engaged in a grueling battle. Both were very evenly matched, and both sustained numerous injuries from the other, the Batman from Ra's sword, and Ra's from the Batman's knuckle batarangs. Damian took down the Scarecrow with ease, cuffing him to a railing. When he turned to see his father and grandfather fighting, he was torn yet again. The Batman and Ra's al Ghul both collapsed, breathless and exhausted from fighting each other. Damian's eyes fell on his grandfather's sword. It had fallen in the skirmish. Damian picked it up, approaching them. Ra's saw Damian and implored him to kill his father, to take his rightful place with the League of Assassins. The Batman implored his son to drop the sword and turn his back on the League. Faced with an impossible choice, Damian yelled and drove the sword forward. It plunged into Ra's al Ghul's shoulder. The Demon's Head roared in pain and, stumbling to his feet, disappeared into the darkness. The Batman would have given chase if not for the severity of his wounds. Damian helped the Bat to his feet, and the two apprehended Scarecrow, turning him over to the police. Ra's al Ghul was broken, defeated, and had no army left. What remnants of the League remained fled back to Asia. An eyewitness account given to police alleges that Ra's al Ghul was confronted by someone in an alleyway. They claimed that they had seen the Joker approach Ra's and draw a gun. Apparently, the Joker was angry with the demon's head for causing so much chaos. The eyewitness told police that the Joker had shot Ra's al Ghul point blank and left his body in the alley, where it was then claimed by a very large figure, presumably Ubu, Ra's bodyguard. This eyewitness account was uncorroborated, and therefore it was impossible to tell if it was factual or not. Whatever the case, Ra's al Ghul never returned to Gotham City. The Shadow War was over. In the aftermath, Congress organized a special committee to deal with the remaining criminals and looters in the city. This committee was led by a woman named Amanda Waller. She had been authorized with emergency powers to bring the National Guard into Gotham to restore order. In the wake of the carnage, countless people had died. Members of the Bat Team and their allies, members of the League of Assassins, and also many innocent citizens caught in the crossfire. Between the explosions, the wanton attacks of the League and prison escapees, and collateral damage from the rooftop battles that were waged, a lot of people had lost their lives. Those deaths began to cause a shift in Gotham's mentality towards the Batman and his crusade. It gave rise to anti-hero and anti-vigilante protests and movements. Some of Gotham's citizens even began calling for the arrests of the Batman and his allies. These movements and voices would intensify in the years to come. The Batman was even more exhausted now. All of the deaths that had occurred during this war weighed heavily on his conscience. He wanted to find a replacement, and he wanted to retire from his crusade. The war was over, but he still felt as if they had lost. Gotham was safe, but its people hated him. In the coming months, the Batman would go back to his roots, working alone more frequently. He would leave his protégés to their own devices. He trusted them to operate independently. Bruce still trained Damian. His relationship with his son had grown through this conflict. The bloody conflict that was the Shadow War was now concluded, but night had yet to fall on the Batman.